Let me ask you something. Do you remember the exact moment you decided to spend 10, um, maybe 15, maybe $20,000 on your car? Most people don't. They remember the dealership smell. They remember the coffee. They remember the sales rep saying, good news, we can get you under $500 a month. But they don't remember deciding to hand over 5 figures of future wealth. Let's assume this. You're sitting at a desk in a dealership. The pen is heavier than it should be. Papers stacked neatly. Your eyes are locked on one line, monthly payment. That's the number that matters. That's the number everyone talks about. $479 a month feels manageable, feels adult, feels safe. Now, here's the part no one slows down to explain. According to Edmunds, 2023, the average new car loses about 25% of its value in the first year alone. Translate that into real life. On a $40,000 car, that's $8,000 to $12,000 gone before your first oil change, not spent, not enjoyed, just transferred away. And if that makes your stomach tighten a bit, good. That reaction isn't guilt, it's clarity arriving late. This isn't about being reckless, it's about how the decision is framed. Here's the mechanism. Humans are wired to think in cash flow, not net worth. Monthly numbers feel survivable, lump sums feel dangerous. Dealerships know this. So the conversation is never, are you okay allocating $40,000 of capital into a rapidly depreciating asset? It's, can you handle $479 a month? Because once your brain classifies something as a subscription, it stops asking ownership level questions. The car becomes a lifestyle upgrade, not a balance sheet event. That's why it feels affordable and expensive at the same time. Two different mental systems are arguing, and the monthly one usually wins. Think of it like a financial trapdoor. You don't fall through it while signing. It opens after the keys are handed over. There's another psychological twist here. Loss aversion works backward. A higher monthly payment feels painful right now. Depreciation feels abstract, delayed, and invisible. So the brain chooses the option that hurts less today, even if it costs more tomorrow. This leads people to overbuy quietly, not impulsively. Here's the reframe, and this matters. Shifting attention to the total 3-year cost works because it forces your brain to treat the car like a single wealth decision, not a monthly comfort bill. When you see this choice costs $11,000 more over 36 months, the decision finally becomes real, not emotional, not moral, just mechanical. And once you see that, you can't unsee it, which raises an uncomfortable question we're going to answer next. If new cars drain money this fast, why do they still feel necessary? There's a sentence almost everyone says at some point. I work hard. I deserve something reliable. It sounds reasonable, responsible even. After years of school, stress, deadlines, and barely getting ahead, a new car feels like proof you've made it. Not flashy, just solid, dependable, adult. But here's the uncomfortable part. According to the Bureau of Transportation Statistics 2022, the average car is parked over 95% of the time. Translate that into your life. Almost everything you're paying for is sitting still in a parking lot, a garage, or on the street, quietly losing value while interest keeps ticking. That's not a moral failure. It's a mismatch between how the brain feels risk and how money actually behaves. Here's the mechanism. Humans overvalue reliability because uncertainty feels threatening. A surprise breakdown feels vivid. You can picture it. The warning light, the tow truck, the bill, depreciation doesn't feel like that. You never get an alert saying your car lost $27 today. So the brain treats repairs as danger and value loss as background noise. Automakers and lenders bundle this fear with identity. Reliability gets paired with words like smart, grown up, successful, because breakdown risk feels immediate while depreciation feels delayed. People systematically overpay for certainty. This leads people to confuse reduced anxiety with increased financial safety. They're not the same thing. Let me show you what this looks like in real life. Two coworkers, same job, same income. Coworker A buys a brand new car for peace of mind, higher payment, warranty included, no surprises, but a guaranteed monthly hit. Coworker B buys a 3-year-old version of the same model. Lower price, no illusion of perfection. They set aside $100, $150 a month into a separate repair fund. Over 5 years, something counterintuitive happens. Coworker B has a few repair bills. They sting, but the total dollars of stress are lower because the worst case costs were capped. Coworker A never has a surprise repair, but quietly pays far more through depreciation and financing. That's the psychological insight. The brain prefers predictable losses over uncertain ones, even when predictable losses are larger. Predictability feels safe, even if it's expensive. So here's the reframe, and it's mechanical, not motivational. Creating a visible car buffer works because it converts uncertain repair risk into a known bounded cost. Once the risk is capped, the emotional premium disappears. You're no longer buying reassurance from a dealership. You're self-insuring at a fraction of the price. Next time you see your car sitting silently in a parking lot, ask yourself one question: what am I really paying for here? Transportation or reassurance? Because once you separate those two, the entire decision changes and it leads directly to the next realization. Depreciation isn't just a downside. It's a transfer you didn't notice happening. Here's the sentence that changes how this whole thing feels. Depreciation isn't money disappearing, it's money moving away from you. That framing matters because disappearing sounds unlucky, random, nobody's fault. But a transfer has a direction. According to Kelly Blue Book Historical Data 2023, most new cars lose about 40 to 50% of their value within the first 5 years. Translate that into real life. When you buy a new car, you're effectively paying half the purchase price for the privilege of being the first owner. Not in repairs, not in fuel, just in time passing. Here's the mechanism that makes this easy to miss. Depreciation is front-loaded. The steepest drop happens early, year 1, year 2, year 3. The first owner absorbs the largest hit. Every owner after that rides a flatter curve. Because this loss never shows up as a bill, it bypasses emotional alarms. There's no notification, no overdraft warning, no statement that says value declined today. Compare that to investing. When markets drop 10%, you feel it immediately. The number turns red. You notice. With cars, the loss is silent. This leads people to underestimate the true cost of ownership compared to assets where losses are visible in real time. Think of depreciation like paying rent to time. You don't get an invoice. You just hand over value every month you own the car. Then the lease ends and you realize what it cost. Picture this mini scene. You decide to sell your car after 3 years. You open resale listings. You scroll and scroll and scroll. Cars just like yours, same model, same trim, listed for tens of thousands less than what you paid. It feels like a penalty, like bad luck, like the market turned on you, but nothing unexpected happened. The outcome was mathematically guaranteed the day you signed, which raises an uncomfortable question. If this loss was guaranteed, why did it feel optional? Because the brain tracks cash outflows, not opportunity costs. You remember the payment. You remember the gas. You forget the value that could have stayed invested or simply stayed with you. Here's the practical reframe, and it works because it isolates the mechanism. Comparing the delta between a new car and a lightly used one forces the cost of being first owner into a single concrete number, not a theory, not a percentage, a dollar amount. When you see this choice cost $9,000 more for the first 3 years, your brain finally has something to react to. The transfer becomes visible, and once you see depreciation as a transfer, not a vague downside, the next question becomes unavoidable. What else could that transferred money have quietly turned into instead? So far, we've talked about what a new car costs you. Now comes the harder question. What else could this money have quietly become? Not hypothetically, not someday, specifically. According to long-term U.S. stock market data, 1926-2022, diversified equities have historically returned about 7 to 10% per year after inflation. Translate that into your life. A $10,000 depreciation hit at age 30 doesn't just vanish, and it can mean $40,000 to $70,000 less by the time you reach retirement. That's not because markets are magical. It's because of time. Here's the mechanism. Opportunity cost compounds because early dollars get more years to work. Every dollar you deploy in your 20s and early 30s has decades to multiply. Cars consume capital exactly during this window, not later when you're stable, not after wealth is built, right at the moment when compounding is strongest. This leads people to delay investing, not because they don't value the future, but because their liquidity is locked inside a declining asset. The money isn't gone, it's just unreachable, and unreachable money can't compound. Picture a split-screen timeline. On one side, someone upgrades cars every few years, payments reset, depreciation restarts, nothing explodes, but nothing accelerates either. On the other side, someone drives modest cars longer and quietly sets up automatic investing with the difference. No heroic saving, no extreme frugality, just fewer resets. Fast forward 20 years, the gap between those two paths isn't about intelligence or discipline. It's about what was allowed to compound. Think of compounding like a time escalator. Step on early and the movement does the work. Step off, even briefly, and you don't just pause. You lose distance you can't get back. And here's the psychological trap. Present bias makes future gains feel unreal. Your brain heavily discounts outcomes more than 10 to 15 years away. A smoother ride today feels concrete. A larger portfolio in 2055 feels theoretical. This leads people to prioritize comfort now over leverage later, even when the trade-off is massive. So here's the reframe that actually changes behavior. Pairing a car decision with a parallel investment projection works because it forces your brain to compare two futures, not a present comfort versus an abstract idea. When you see this car choice replaces X dollars in future flexibility, the trade-off becomes tangible. Ask yourself one clean question: what is this car replacing in my future? Because once you see that the window sticker is missing its biggest number, the future value, the decision stops being about taste or status. It becomes about trajectory, and that brings us to the part most people never hear explained. Why this trade-off hurts the most early in life, even when you're doing everything right. If this whole conversation feels unfair early in life, that's because it is. That's not frustration talking. That's timing. According to Federal Reserve data 2022, households under 35 hold the lowest median net worth while carrying the highest debt-to-income ratios. Translate that into your daily reality. Early adults are the most sensitive to capital drains because there's less buffer to absorb them. Nothing breaks, nothing explodes, but every dollar matters more. Here's the mechanism most people never have explained. Early budgets are dominated by fixed costs, rent, insurance, student loans, health coverage, and often a car payment. These expenses lock in before income has time to stretch. That leaves very little margin for error. When cars become the largest non-housing expense, which they often are, a single decision can quietly slow wealth building for years. This leads people to think, why does saving feel impossible? Not because they're careless, because the sequence is stacked against them. Picture a recent graduate. First real paycheck hits. It feels huge for about 2 weeks. Then reality shows up. Rent takes its cut, loans step in, insurance claims a share, and now there's a car payment competing with starting retirement contributions. The math isn't subtle. If one fixed expense claims too much early on, everything else gets squeezed. This isn't about discipline, it's about structural sequencing, what gets locked in first. Think of early finances like a narrow bridge. There's room to move forward, but not much room to sway. Add one oversized load and progress slows for everyone behind it. Here's the psychological trap layered on top. Progress feels invisible at low balances. Going from $0 to $5,000 doesn't feel like winning, even though it's the hardest part. This reduces motivation right when consistency matters most. Meanwhile, a nice car is visible, immediate, affirming. So the brain mistakenly treats it as progress. That's why people feel bad with money early on, even when they're doing exactly what the system nudges them to do. Here's the reframe that restores confidence: optimizing big fixed costs. First works because it permanently lowers the income threshold required to save. When the largest expenses are lighter, every future raise goes further. Saving stops feeling like a sacrifice and starts feeling automatic. This isn't about deprivation, it's about buying breathing room. Ask yourself this: is my financial stress coming from too many decisions or from one oversized decision made too early? Because once you understand that timing, not effort, is the pressure point, the next step becomes clearer. And that step isn't about never enjoying a car. It's about knowing when it stops hurting and when it starts helping, which brings us to the rule that quietly separates people who feel stuck from people whose money starts working with them. Let's land this calmly, because this isn't about never enjoying a car. It's about timing. Most people here spend less on cars and translate it as restriction, smaller life, less joy. That's not what actually happens. What changes is when the enjoyment stops competing with everything else. Here's the hard constraint that reframes the entire decision. According to financial planners' long-standing rule of thumb, keeping total vehicle costs under roughly 10% of gross income dramatically improves saving capacity within 12 to 24 months. Translate that into lived experience. Once your car stops eating a double-digit share of your income, cash flow pressure drops fast. Not eventually, noticeably. This isn't magic, it's math and psychology working together. Here's the mechanism. Cars hit your finances in two places at once: depreciation and financing. New cars lose the steepest value in the first few years, while loans front-load interest when balances are highest. When you shrink that exposure, you don't just save money, you increase optionality. Optionality means fewer forced decisions, because when your fixed costs are lighter, surprises don't knock you off course. That flexibility lowers stress. Lower stress makes plans stick, and plans that stick beat short bursts of discipline every time. That's why this works long term. So here's the simple rule that quietly builds wealth without deprivation. Delay new cars until net worth momentum exists. Buy used where depreciation has flattened, typically after year 3 to 5. Redirect the difference automatically, not manually, automatically. Why automatic matters: when the money moves before you feel it, there's no daily decision fatigue. Progress continues even when motivation dips. This isn't self-control, it's system design. Think of the car as a tool, not a trophy. It should support your life, not demand applause from it. Picture the scene: you're at the dealership, calm, no pressure. You know the payment fits the 10% line. You know your investments are already moving without you thinking about them. The decision doesn't feel like compromise, it feels aligned. Later that day, your phone buzzes, not from a lender, but from an investment app confirming another contribution. That's what leverage feels like. This is the identity shift that actually matters. Choosing less car now isn't sacrifice. It's buying time. It's buying flexibility. It's buying the ability to say yes later without stress. So the next time you think about upgrading, don't ask, can I afford this? Ask, what if this choice made everything else easier? Because that's the moment money stops feeling tight and starts working with you. Not as someone trying to save money, but as someone who's good with money.